Michele, thank you for joining us today for this interview.
Thank you so much for having me.
So first question is, just introduce yourself, if you would, to general election voters. What do you most want these voters to know about yourself?
Well, I want them to know I am actually a product of the public school system here in North Carolina. I graduated high school in Charlotte, and I went and got my bachelor's of nursing at UNC Chapel Hill. And what I was afforded here in North Carolina was an excellent opportunity to pursue my career goals. And what we're seeing now is a real literacy crisis that I think is quickly translating into an economic crisis and is going to impact the future of North Carolina and our nation. And so I want to get back to the basics of education and ensure that we can uphold that promise of a sound basic education for every student in North Carolina.
Great. So tell me, what would be your top agenda items in office as Superintendent of Public Instruction?
I think everyone is concerned about the rising crime and violence that's happening, not just in our communities, but it's really come into our schools. So that would be one of the things. We need to close loopholes and make our schools be the safest in the state. The other thing is the literacy crisis that I just mentioned. We have got to get back. We got to push out these political agendas and social interest groups and focus on reading and writing and math and science, the things that are going to teach our children to be critical thinkers.
That's great. I actually wanted to ask you a little bit more about the violence in schools, the
Yes.
behavior issues, that sort of thing, and also the literacy. But first, on
Yes.
the crime issues, the behavior issues, what do you see as a way forward on that to help? Especially, post-pandemic, we saw that rise,
Right.
especially. So, what's a way forward on
I think
that?
the way forward is it's twofold. I think we need to look at threats that are from the outside. So talking about what we're going to do to secure our schools from outside threats. But the other thing is in the classroom, we really need to be empowering our teachers to have control of their classroom, and we need to be backing them up administratively so that the classroom can be a place of peace and order, so that teachers can teach and students can learn. And so I think just conduct issues and raising that bar of expectation for our students is going to be important.
And then on the reading proficiency
Yes.
issue, you brought that up. Obviously, we've seen some, not just recent problems, but it's kind of across the board for
That's
a while
true.
with even scores by third grade.
Yes.
If there's not proficiency by that point, there can be some definite challenges. So what would be your steps to help with the reading proficiency?
I think we're starting on a right path. We're going back to phonics and to the science of reading, and we're looking more at how we can provide for our students kind of one-on-one contact. It's very important, especially with new readers, that they have that opportunity to have instruction and have it be face-to-face. I think that's going to be important for us to bring that back into our classrooms.
So I know you've taken some hits in the media over being a homeschool mom. We were just talking about it before the interview.
Yes.
Tell me, so as a homeschool mom with that experience, how are you taking that experience, and how would you use it in DPI as superintendent to actually inform yourself better for the position of leading public schools?
Yeah, I really think I'm bringing an entire set of skills, because my kids have been in public and private and in homeschool. And so I feel like I have a really good idea of the good things about each one of them, and also maybe some of the pitfalls or the struggles. I will say for 10 years I taught here in Wake County to help. I was in co-ops helping other homeschool families to train up their high schoolers to be prepared to move on to whatever their post-secondary options are. I saw firsthand kind of that when the schools weren't meeting their needs, right, the parents came in and tried to do that. I think the incredible thing about homeschool is you can really retrofit an education to your child's bent, to whatever their skills are, but you can also spend added time on what their weaknesses are. And I think that that's what we need to try to translate into our public school system as a whole.
Let me ask you about another item that will probably come up as superintendent, and that's the whole issue of the kind of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion
Yep.
issues in schools right now. Obviously, in the middle of the pandemic, this really came up in a big way.
Right.
It's going to be an ongoing issue. How would you address that, deal with that as superintendent?
Well, I really see that as a problem coming down from DC. It is definitely DC politics and special interest groups, and so we need to push back against that, and we need to focus on true academic success for our students. And one of the ways that I'm going to do that is I'm going to choose who I hire very carefully in the DPI. We're not going to be picking people that have a political agenda. I just don't think politics belongs in the classroom. And so we also are going to be able to, the superintendent has the choice of who they make contracts with. And so we're going to be looking really honestly and find the people who don't have a political agenda and who can help us to uphold the laws that are set by the General Assembly for a sound basic education.
So overall with DPI right now, what would you say the agency is doing well first, and then what would you say needs to be improved?
I think, as we stated before, one of the things that they are doing well is they have been trying to get back to phonics and the science of reading rather than what we've seen for about the last 15 years that really is not helping our children to master reading comprehension and just that functionality. The other thing that there has been talked about is the need to bring back objective math and to really allow our children. I don't think anyone should leave elementary school until you have really mastered reading and math, and that means all of those functions of math, you know, whether it's the multiplication, division, and all those things, but if that is the building block for all other learning. And so if we can really focus on that, and I'd like to even look at extending, talk to the people that are the experts in this, and see if we might want to extend that literacy date beyond 5th grade, maybe even to 8th grade, because as we've seen with just 25% of our 8th graders last year being proficient nationally in reading, math, or science, that is a concern. And I want those middle school children to still be able to ask questions and to admit that maybe they're weak in something. Yeah.
Great. So, you know, say we get to next year, November, you're elected, you're in office next year. Coming in immediately, what do you think would be one of your biggest challenges?
Well, I think one of the needs is to really do an audit to see where our money is going and to see what programs have actually been beneficial in helping our kids academically or in their moral development or in career preparedness. Because I do think that there's a lot of administrative bloat. I think there's a lot of things that need to be pushed to the side in this time when we find ourselves a bit in a crisis educationally. It's time to get back to what we really need and get rid of the extras, so to speak. So yeah. I think that's going to be my goal. If you're talking about what the struggle is, you know, with the State Board of Education and whatnot, I will promise this. I am going to work with anyone across the board that has ideas to solve what's happening in our classrooms right now, whether it's the literacy crisis, whether it's our teacher shortage, whether it's the violence in the schools, or whether it's just that we don't seem to have the funding to pay for what we need to have paid. But I am not going to compromise our North Carolina values to do that.
Let me ask you real quick about school choice then. Options like charter schools, opportunity scholarship for private schools, those sorts of things. There's a notion out there that they hurt traditional public schools. What's your thought on that? Do they help? Do they hurt?
I believe in the free market system. I think that when we have true, honest competition, it makes for better services and better products, and it gives it at a better price. So I think that absolutely parents should be the ones, they should have true options. And that's why I believe we need to make the public school system be the best that it can absolutely be. Because you don't really have a choice if your child is really not benefiting and you're forced to do something that, you know, potentially is a strain on your family. So,
Great. To wrap up then, Mo Green, your opponent.
Yes.
Why isn't he the right choice?
Because he is the system. He wants to continue what has actually been failing our families of North Carolina, as well as he is a radical progressive. He is one of the ones that has been, when he was the CEO of Z. Smith Reynolds for 6 years, he actually cut the checks for those BLM and Antifa riots that destroyed our businesses and cities throughout our state. He is a 100% proponent of CRT and DEI and even the transgender movement being pushed into every facet of our schools, as well as, I think it was 2 days ago when he said that Planned Parenthood, he was proudly saying that they are sponsoring him to be the next superintendent. And I have to tell you, as a nurse and as a mom, I do not believe that Planned Parenthood has anything to offer our students in the way of, you know, moral fortitude or academic excellence or career preparedness. So I think that parents across the board have the duty and the right to make medical choices for their minor children and parents alone. I don't think that's the job of the school system.
Great. Well, Michele, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.